photography. Thank you, Nilu, once again for taking the time to speak with me today. Before diving into Nilu's background, as well as doing a Q&A, I just wanted to introduce myself again. I'm Leah Jones. I work at Quantcast. This is not a sales pitch whatsoever, but for those who may not be aware of what Quantcast is or what we do, we are the creators of a new and innovative, intelligent audience platform that empowers brands, agencies, and publishers to know and grow their audiences, reaching people in the right place at the right time. Before we dive into the conversation, I wanted to talk a little bit about Nilu's background. So Nilu is a global and digital integrated marketing strategist with a passion for connecting with audiences and creating content. During her more than 10 years experience, she has led successful social and digital campaigns and influencer marketing efforts, guiding overall brand marketing and growth strategy across multiple industries, including beauty, fragrance, travel, and spirits. Nilu has worked with brands such as Bacardi Spirits, which I love, Estee Lauder, Urban Decay, as well as Bare Minerals. Nilu, before we dive into any questions, do you want to say anything before we dive into our conversation?
Course. Yes, I'm very happy to be here. Thank you so much for hosting me. And I'm so thrilled that we are connecting as well, Leah.
Oh, perfect. Nilu and I got to speak a little bit before this session. So if I am referencing our conversation, that's just a little hindsight for everyone joining as well. So my first question for you, Nilu, is leading with cultural relevance is an important topic that needs to be discussed. Cultural relevance can be defined as empowering people, such as colleagues, intellectually, socially, emotionally, and politically by using cultural references to impart knowledge, skills, and attitudes. And this whole, piece was created by this woman, Gloria Billings. So what does leading with cultural relevance mean to you? And also, what does it mean in terms of the work you produce?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think, culture can mean so many different things, right? And we're in this very interesting time in the world as well. So it's a given that culture transcends boundaries. It's geographical, it's socioeconomic. It's not just limited to race or ethnic backgrounds. There's so much that really builds what culture means for individual as a marketer, and then also within the environment that you instill in your team and in your company. So for me, as a leader, that's how I approach what cultural relevance means and how I look to building what that is within my team. So it's really maintaining that global mindset, and it's really instilling and embedding that way of thinking, that diversity of thought into your team and culture. And that's really how, in this global world, you're going to be able to successfully connect and create campaigns that are relevant for all the various different audiences that we're hoping to reach. And so that's how that's what that means to me. That's how I approach it. And even as I think about my own background, I grew up in Sri Lanka, which is a very different place. I've lived and traveled abroad as a kid. I also lived in South Africa. So, all of those experiences make me who I am as an individual, and the way I approach my work and the way I approach looking at how to fine tune campaigns, how to connect with individuals, how to learn about them. And so that kind of curiosity is what I also look at people. And I look to bringing them into the marketing campaigns that we develop.
Yeah, I think it's wonderful how you take your background and your experiences and apply it to your work as well as the campaigns you develop. I think that is a really important approach that you take. And I know we'll dive into a little bit deeper, a little bit further in our questioning. So I'll hold off for that one. But the next question I had for you is, Women's Wear Daily, WWD, reports that Black women spend $7.5 billion per year on beauty products. I can attest to that. On average, women of color spend 80% more money on cosmetics and twice as much on skincare than the general women's market. Although historically women of color have been ignored in this industry, let's think forward and acknowledge the progress we made to date. As someone who's been working in the beauty and fragrance industry for the past decade, what are your thoughts on the industry's recent movement toward becoming more inclusive with shade range expansion and diverse beauty campaigns?
It's exactly what you referenced, Leah. I think it's very important to acknowledge and celebrate the progress. I know it can be disheartening to some, I'm sure, that it's taken us this long to get here, but the good thing is that we're here. We have a platform, and now it's about how we are looking to use this platform and create that much needed change. So many people in the beauty industry, outside of the beauty industry, have advocated for this level of change. And I think it's also looking at not just product creation. So from a shade range perspective, I think it's about representation across all forms, right? Who are you? Who are the creators of who's your creative community? Who's creating that content for you? Who's in these campaigns representing and speaking on behalf of your brand? And I think it's also about creating campaigns and creating work that's an accurate representation of the audience, the society we live in this global world. And that also comes from who's behind the scenes and being able to create that authentic, genuine conversation and dialogue. So I think we're all really happy that we're here because it's taken a lot of work. And I think it's more about how we establishing change to make sure this progress is not short-lived, and it's going to happen throughout time, and we need to hold ourselves accountable for that change that's going to happen as well.
Yeah, I totally agree with you in holding people accountable. I know this isn't the next question, but comment is, I'm sure you know too, when Rihanna came out with her Fenty Beauty line and she had all these different skin complexions and tones, and everyone was so excited because they were like, I can't believe I'm seeing a representation of my complexion through a beauty brand. So I think to your point, you don't want that to be a one-time thing. You want that to be like a continuous progress that keeps going.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think a lot of people in the beauty industry have referenced that, right? Like it took someone like Rihanna, it took, not that long ago, a couple of years ago was when Fenty launched. So it, that was, I think, an eye-opening event for so many people in the beauty industry and just in general too. But that's what it takes, right? Like it takes one brave soul to be able to do something like that. I mean, it's Rihanna. So, and then that also helps other individuals be given a platform. And then it also helps brands, leaders, and marketers look inward and understand, how do we create product that caters to our community? How do we authentically represent and create a dialogue with our community? And I think one of the things we do see, especially with the younger generation, is they do hold brands accountable. And so I think a lot of brands have started responding to this younger generation, and we're very grateful that this is the path forward.
Yeah, I am totally aligned with that. I love the fact that younger generations are just like holding people accountable. I think it's great. And I know we'll like dive more into that later as well, which is great. My next question is for you is, how do you think about diversity when it comes to building your team and ensuring that you're really bringing in those different voices and perspectives?
Yeah, definitely. I think it's building on what I said before. I think it's a lot about, looking at people and not resumes so much. Don't get me wrong, resumes are very important. But I also work in social and digital, where you have to be creative, and ideas come from lots of different places at different times, and there's no formula, especially if you're trying to push the boundary and create some really innovative work, right? So aside from what's just on paper and your industry experience, I also want to look at people that have different types of experiences, that have tested and solved different types of problems, because all of that, your curiosity, the way you think about how to solve problems, all of that really is, I think, having contributes to a different and I think a diverse group of people. And that's what's important to me, outside of the traditional sense of how we look at diversity, right? Like, of course, you know, we want people of different ethnic groups and different backgrounds and all of that, that as I mentioned, so people from all walks of life, in addition to how you are looking at your work and how you're looking at solving problems, curiosity, all of that, I think, how do you tell stories beautifully, like all of that, especially as a storyteller myself, that's really important. And that's how I also look at building teams. I think one of the other things that I always try to do is really, it's almost like having an inspiration corner. It's really getting people to look outside of their role or their industry, even learn from other individuals, learn from other industries, because there's so much out there. And right now, especially, people are doing some fantastic work. So I think it's a lot about who you are as a person and how you consume that information and how you kind of apply it to your everyday life within the professional setting and even personal. So I think that's how I kind of look at my team and go about building a diverse team, if you will.
Yeah, and I think that's a really good approach that you take, because it sounds like you're saying also too that diverse teams build diverse thinking, right? Like you get perspectives that may not be those like traditional perspectives that you would get from someone who, you know, went to college and like, you know, had a more linear path. And some people with a different path, to your point, can help bring a new idea that you just may have not thought of. So I think that
yeah, good. Definitely. And you want a team that can balance, right? Just like any relationship, because teams are essentially relationships. You spend so much time at work. You need to find a group of individuals that also challenge you. Myself as a leader, I want to be challenged by my team, and I want to be able to challenge my team and help them develop and help them grow as well. So it's a two-way street. You know, it's a two-way relationship, and so I'm not looking for people that are exactly like me, but I am looking for people that are open to learning and growing. And I think that's really important, especially now more than ever. I think that kind of way of thinking.
Yeah, I agree with that. And I think that's really great to hear. And I'm sure people here are also like excited to hear that as well. So another question that I have, and I know a little bit later we'll kind of get into the Q&A, but as you know, Sharon Shooter, so apologies if I'm mispronouncing her last name, who has the brand Uma Beauty, created the Pull Up or Shut Up initiative, which challenges brands to share the number of Black employees currently employed at the corporate and executive level, many of them rising to the occasion. And as we speak, there are a lot of efforts on how we can also support the AAPI community as well. Based on your experience as a marketer and leader in the beauty industry and beauty and fragrance industry, how has this impacted your perspective as a marketer? And how would you advise brands, corporations to support their employees?
Listen, Sharon is a very brave soul. And she started this initiative, I believe last year, at a very pivotal time in the world, in the US, and also specifically, of course, in the beauty industry, right? And we need a lot of people that are willing to stand up and, as I mentioned before, do that work and hold people and brands and marketers like myself even accountable, right? Like we're all accountable for the change that we want to see and we want to make in this industry and just in our society. So I think that initiative, like so many others that came after, and all the dialogue and conversations that happened this past year onto this year, it's just been eye-opening, right? I think it's creating a platform for these underrepresented communities, for people that have been systematically silenced to be able to come forward and have these honest conversations. And I think it's given brands, it's given brand leaders and brands were given the opportunity to look inside and understand how are we structured, what does representation really truly look like, because a lot of the times you know, people aren't given a seat at the table where decisions are being made, and that's really where you need to be, and you need to be able to create change, right? So I think that was a big takeaway for so many, and we're still seeing that happen today. It's been such a difficult couple of weeks, and for so many people in the Asian American community as well. So it's also about creating a safe space as a leader to be able to support your employees, having that empathy and creating and really being an ally, right? And I know, I'm sure that word is thrown around a lot right now, but being able to really truly advocate for your employees, advocate for their mental health, creating a safe space so people can, you know, come to work and just be who they are. So it's being able to bring your authentic self to work as well. And I think that is something that might have, you know, been missing. And that's why we needed all of these kinds of initiatives to bring those things to life. And the good thing, as I mentioned before, is we have that platform now. It's slow, but change is happening. So I think it's more about how are we looking forward and what are those steps that we're taking to make sure this is not a one-time thing, you know, that this change is here to stay, and what does that look like?
Yeah, I think to your point, like making sure that this change is here to stay, but also creating a safe space, because everything that has been going on within the Asian community the past few weeks, like employees need a safe space, to your point, and they need to feel like their voices are being heard. That actually kind of ties into my next question as well, is like, you know, there has been a lot of attention to certain issues within the Asian community, within the Black community as well, with just more recent events. So when did you start feeling more comfortable speaking to, like, you know, cultural relevance and just these kind of issues at work, and what factored into your decision?
I think this is one of those instances. I'm here now speaking about what it really means to bring in all different types of cultures in all senses of the word. But I think, you know, you spend a lot of time in this industry, or just in your professional life, and you want to be able to be your authentic self. So at some point, you know, I realized that's when you produce the best work. That's when you become the best leader. That's when you really thrive, and you can help your team as well. And so you have to be able to be strong enough to make those changes yourself, but you also have to have other people that are advocating for you and creating that safe space as well. And so those are things that just, you know, came together for me. And I felt like it was important to be able to, if I can, you know, inspire anyone, or if I can help mentor or give some sort of strength or confidence to any other, especially any other woman of color, you know, that I want to be able to do that. And so it was that sort of how I made that decision. And I think, you know, we're all getting comfortable more and more every day. So it's a work in progress.
I mean, I totally hear you on that. I want to say I'm glad that you are getting more comfortable, and I'm glad that we're just getting this opportunity as two women of color to speak on the stage. Yeah. And so, yeah, I'm glad that you're doing that too. And I'm sure the people around you are happy to see it as well.
Yeah, likewise. Yeah, you too.
Can you share some examples of how you felt inspired by content that you and your team created that led to connecting with diverse audiences?
Yeah, I think throughout my career, I've always tried to align myself with brands that embody my personal values as well. I think having being able to work for brands like Urban Decay or even Bare Minerals, they have such strong, authentic representation of what it means to be a woman. And I mean, this is beauty. It's all about self care. It's all about making you feel good as well. And but it's but beauty brands have a big responsibility because they are also the first brands that we, especially as children, connect to, right? We're always in our mom's purses or what have you. So they do leave a lasting impression, and you always remember the first beauty product that you purchased or what have you. So there is that responsibility. So for me, one of the things that I worked on at Urban Decay was we were one of the first brands to I believe put unretouched images on Instagram, which I think was like a huge effort on our part to be able to inspire and encourage people that you are beautiful and just the way you are, and that kind of taking a step like that from a big beauty brand is huge, right? Even now at my work on specifically on Calvin Klein fragrances. One of the coolest campaigns I was a part of was developing our CK Everyone scent. It's a genderless scent. It's vegan, so there's a big sustainability initiative tied to it. It's really about self-expression and celebrating your individuality. And so it's really, again, connecting to audiences where they are, how they see themselves, and encouraging them. And I think, and that was really the platform for our entire campaign as well. So being able to create these types of campaigns, encourage people to have these dialogues, I think has been hugely important for me as a marketer, especially in the beauty industry right now.
Yeah, I think to your point, like creating a genderless scent, like that's huge, and just campaigning that, and also untouched photos on Instagram. Like, oh, I love that. Like, love that. Like, no, like for real, because like as a woman, think about it. Like, how long does it take you to like really post a photo on Instagram? You're like, hold on, I have to like add a filter. Oh, yeah. Like let me retouch this part and then let me post it so it looks perfect. But to your point, like tying into being your authentic self and like posting untouched filters, that makes people feel better about themselves also too as well.
Right, exactly. So it's more about celebrating who you are. It's about self-care. It's about being able to express your beautiful self the way you want to. And I think that's a big platform, and that's a big change from where I think the beauty industry was not that long ago.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. I feel like a lot of the things that I've seen in the beauty and fragrance industry over the past year definitely has been different than what I've seen in the past. And then I just have one last question for you before I go to our Q&A, because our Q&A is so great. We have all these questions already. So I want to make sure we're able to get to them. So my one last question, and it kind of ties into our earlier conversation talking about younger generations. You and I talked about this one-on-one, how like growing up, we didn't see a lot of, Black and brown people in commercials and everything else. So I think with the younger generations and driving inspiration, seeing someone who looks like them and creating beauty from within is important. So in your opinion, how does the beauty industry impact younger generations?
I think, the impact is huge, right? We are always looking for role models, even as adults. That's something we constantly gravitate to. And this is a hot topic, especially this past couple of years or two, or it feels like 20 in this COVID world. But yeah, it's, so I think, beauty brands especially have a responsibility to be able to give that platform to individuals that haven't had that representation right before. And I think more and more brands are doing that. And that's something that I advocate for as a marketer as well. We're also seeing other brands, even outside of beauty, like Matt will created the first, African-American Barbie doll. And I think they also created a Barbie doll that had a different body shape. So I think it's all about representation across every single way you can imagine, right? And I think that's something that's so huge. And again, I think beauty brands especially have realized that. And I think they're making that change, and they're creating these, even whether it's visual or dialogues or what have you, they're trying their best, I think, to be able to accurately represent the communities that we live in. And we're starting to see all of those trickle down in terms of the campaigns that have come to life, right? I mean, CoverGirl, for example, they had a model that was over 50 years old, which I think was, yeah. And I mean, Dove, like all these brands, I mean, they're really, really pushing the boundaries in all senses of the way. And these are really important work for, I think, across the board. And I can only imagine that the younger generation is going to grow up with all these different types of role models that, sadly, some of us didn't get to, but that's what progress is, right? And that's what taking steps in the right direction means.
Yeah, I agree with you. And I also would say, like, it's never too late to see some type of progress, right? Like, it's, for me, it's always great to see. I have nephew and nieces, and it's so nice to see them have dolls that are different colors and different like shades and sizes. And I'm just like, this is nice that they have this.
Right. I think it's also about, normalizing it, right? Like we're at a time where we are celebrating a lot of firsts. Like we celebrate the first female, vice president. We celebrate when women are CEOs or when they're on boards, or, I work for a company that has an incredible female CEO as well. And we're celebrating all these momentous occasions, as we should. But I think the next step is to normalize it. So we're no longer celebrating the first, we're celebrating just collectively the next steps, and all these female leaders and all these young girls that can, or boys or girls or whoever that can, these kids that can grow up and see these people as leaders.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. I am dreaming of that day. I know it will happen where, we'll just be used to everything. So Nilu, I'm going to start reading a few questions that we got through.
Yeah.
So one of the questions we got was, what heritage or older beauty brands do you think have done a good job in changing their products to be more inclusive? This person said, I'm thinking of older brands like, oh, Bobbi Brown. Yeah, I remember that. And Estee Lauder as well.
Yeah, I'm sorry. The question was, what brands have been doing a great job?
Yeah, just what brands have been doing a good job being like more inclusive.
Yeah, I mean, I think that definitely those two brands, but I think a lot of brands, especially right now, are trying to create that change, right? I mean, we just saw how even a ton of Unilever brands were asked to take out, creating like lightning effects, things like that, that are very alarming and hurtful for women and people trying to use these products. I mean, they're mostly targeted to women. So I think across the board, companies and brands are trying to make these changes. And it's also from a product, it's not just marketing, right? It's also product innovation. So there's so many individuals and so many processes that have to be affected to truly make these changes. Because I think at some point, the messaging, the visual messaging or the dialogue that you have on your social media platforms or what have you, those are sometimes the easy changes to create. So I think across the board, brands are trying to make these changes. And I think there's a lot of new brands that are coming up, like Lip Tinted, Kulfi, like all of these brands are coming up that are also run by people of color. And they're really creating these products with the community that they want to represent. And so I think it's a lot about also supporting those brands as well.
Yeah, I think that's great. Another question that came through was, how can you inspire consumers to have emotional connection with your content?
I think, emotional content and emotional connection comes from accurate representation and genuine, showing your genuine brand values, right? I think we are seeing a lot of brands really quickly pivot their marketing strategy, and they're putting all sorts of different people and messages, and I know it's probably really overwhelming as a consumer too, to be like, oh great, here's another campaign from all these brands. So I think it's all about showing those brand values, and not just since not having sort of a material connection either. It's about also accurately maybe giving the right creators the opportunity, the platform and the opportunity to create content on your behalf. It's about um, hiring the right people so they can accurately represent your brand. I think it's a lot of those kinds of changes. They're not going to happen overnight, but I think people have recognized it, and it's starting to make waves.
Yeah, I definitely agree. And part of your answer kind of ties into like another question that was asked, where someone said the space is becoming more and more saturated with celebrities and influencers starting their own beauty brands. Yeah. And they were saying like, how is this changing the industry, if at all? So I do think like you touched a little bit upon that in the question you just answered, in terms of like hiring people like who are authentic, and it's making beauty brands become more innovative. But I still wanted to ask this person's question live to see if there was anything else you'd like to add to that.
Yeah, of course. I mean, I think, there's always going to be an evolution, and I think the good thing is you have a lot of choices now, or at least that's what I would hope that is coming from all of these various brands that are created by so many different individuals, whether it's celebrities, established brands, or even influencers. I think having choice, especially right now, is great. But sure, it is a very saturated market. And I think we are seeing even the influencer, community shift and change, right? We had all these like really amazing influencers come to life. And now we are gearing towards like having our communities and our consumers really help with that product innovation standpoint. So I think it's always going to be evolving. But the great thing is that it's giving everyone a chance to connect with the brand a little bit more closely, and you're going to have more choices, which means that hopefully you can get that right product for you.
Yeah, I agree. I feel like oftentimes, I don't know if you feel this way, but I feel like sometimes people are like, oh, there's too many choices. But I'm also like, there's so many people in the world. Like we all need, like, there's so many choices because there's so many people in the world. And I'm sure you do too. You use multiple brands and beauty products. Like I don't use just like one specific brand. I'll like switch between a few. And I feel like a lot of people are like that. So I don't think having a lot of choices is a bad thing, unless you feel otherwise. That's fine.
Nope. I think, being able to that's when you also get really great products, right? And you can like push innovation. So I think it's not a bad thing. And to your point, it gives you the opportunity to experiment, which we know from consumer trends is something that people are doing more of now. I think gone are the days where you buy that one product and that's it for life. And to your point, and we've just discussed this so much, we're all so different and our needs are so different. We need a lot of those different kinds of products. So it's also about, so what I hope is happening is also that these individuals and brands are creating products to cater to this very global world that we live in.
No, I totally agree with that. Another question we got was, where and how does content creation start for you? The person said message, objective first, audience first, or channel first?
It's definitely, I think, looking at what your objectives are, right? Who are you trying to reach? How are you trying to reach? What are you even marketing? Is existing product? Is it a brand new product? Is it where in the life cycle is the product messaging that you're trying to develop, and why? So all of those objectives help you fine tune the messaging and the creative that you're developing for the audiences, and then for the channels, and then how you continuously reach them across all various different consumer touch points as well. So I would, mostly start with that objective of like who, what, why, all of those questions that you need answered.
Yeah, that's a really good point as well, in terms of like, you need to know who, the who, what, like what you're trying to do before you kind of like dig into it. So that's great to hear your perspective on that. Another question we have is, what principles have your teams learned about authentic communication during this time? Have you had to adjust your messaging and tone, and does it vary by channel?
Yes, of course. I think, it goes without saying that we, like so many other brands, we all had to look at internally, how are we approaching this communication? What does it mean to even have a presence during this time? Like, who are we as a brand to be able to speak during this time? And what does it mean if we, like, how are we saying it? What are those key messages? And again, it all goes back to your brand values as well. I think it's not such a reach if you already are a brand that talks about representation or talks about inclusivity, and it's a very natural, organic kind of connection to your brand, right? I think lately consumers have felt a disconnect because some of these brands are coming out of nowhere. And yes, short answer, it does change based on platforms as well.
Okay. No, that's really good to know as well. I know we do have Izzy back. Izzy, do we have time for one question? If not, I can definitely hand it back over to you.
We can do one more question.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Okay. Thank you so much. This one person said, how are you using data to plan, evaluate, and make decisions around your marketing efforts?
Yeah, I mean, data is across all touch points. And I think we've all been at the helm of like, what does data even look like right now, right? With all the challenges that social media platforms are having and access to the right type of data. But data does drive a lot of our content decisions and how we reach people, where we reach them, what type of content that we're developing, and how are we optimizing it. It's all audience-based insights, just like everyone else. But on top of that, we have also looked at how to create the right type of content for our brand so that we are able to give our consumers, our audiences, a really great view into who we are as a brand as well, which is, I think, really key right now. And that's how you have that emotional connection. And then on top of that, we leverage data to reach consumers at the right time when they're shopping at various different ways. And we're also testing and learning different platforms and reaching new consumers that we haven't spoken to before. So all of those things are definitely in play, especially now more than ever. I mean, I also try to sell fragrance, which is all about your sensorial self, and it's smelling the fragrance and playing with the